And hello again, everyone. This is Joy here. So I thought we could do another sketchbook page working abstractly, but doing it maybe slightly differently this time. So I have made two larger rectangles. Last time I worked with very small little rectangles. This time I thought we would try a little bit bigger, still in our sketchbook. And I just used some blue painter's tape because it's not very tacky. So I just tacked that down to map out my two rectangles there. And we're just going to lay down some color as a basic layer to start with. And I'll be working mostly with a cool color palette this time, although who knows, I might throw in a warm color as a contrast at some point, but we'll start with cool colors and we'll just see how that goes. For those of you who watched my previous video where we did the smaller rectangles in the sketchbook, I did actually add more to all of those little rectangles. I don't know if you can see that, but I added more paper, and I also added washi tape, which is these little tiny floral pieces. Another really fantastic, easy collage thing to do is to just have washi tape in all different patterns and colors and just have a little collection of that on hand. Very easy to just grab and rip off some little pieces. It adds really nice interest to your pieces. There's some great patterns there. These little floral pieces were really quite pretty. So I just added that, and then I also went back in actually with my charcoal pencil and I made some of the lines darker again. So, and maybe a little bit heavier in certain areas. And I actually went back into the previous one that I had briefly shown you in my last video with the blue, and I went back in with the charcoal pencil there. I created these crescent shapes in a really strong black. And that came about because when I was looking at this page, I saw that it had a lot of curves and a couple of loops and spirals, and that crescent shape seemed to be appearing a lot, so I wanted to emphasize that in some of the pieces just a little bit more. So I went back over that, made some of those black lines just a little bit heavier and darker, just went over certain parts here and there. And so I'm much happier now with those as well. So, you know, that's what happens. You just go back after a period of time and look at things and think, okay, I think I need to add a little bit more. And that's great. That's wonderful. So, but today I thought we will do larger rectangles and work a little bit more with paint. And you might see my cat wandering around here. So, you know, in case you see a cat paw or a cat tail, she likes to a lot of times be a part of the creative process. Hopefully not sticking her paws in the paint. That did happen one time. You never know. I actually like working on the floor. I don't know if you can tell that from the video, but I'm actually sitting on the floor and I have everything spread out around me. It's just how I prefer to work. I like sitting cross-legged, you know. Maybe I'm a weirdo, but hey, everyone is different, right? So I pulled out some color to start with. Just some turquoise acrylic paint and the white gesso that I mixed up to create an even lighter turquoisey color. And so I'm just going to lay this down really quick. And I can paint over the top of the tape because we'll pull that off later on and we'll have that nice crisp clean edge to our rectangles, which is very nice to have. And having watched other artists' demos, when they peel that tape off at the end, it's just such a really neat thing to see that crisp, clean edge with a crisp, clean white border around the work. So we'll do that too. At the end, we'll pull that tape off. And just doing this real quick. I'm not really concerned about what brush strokes are looking like with this, because a lot of this will get covered up. I'm going to work on top of it in so many different ways, so it really actually does not matter how you're laying down the color or if you can see the brush strokes or not. It really does not matter. So and there we have it. Now I do want to maybe do some quick little splotches with some other colors. So I pulled out this really beautiful dark steely blue gray here, and I'm just going to put a little bit of that down, and we might mix some of that in with our little bits of turquoise that we have remaining on our palette here as well. And a really easy thing to do if you want to have harmonious colors when you're working is whatever new colors you're putting down, if you mix just a little bit of your previous or your base color into it, you're automatically going to have a harmonious color because you've got that original color mixed in with it, right? So I'm just not thinking about it. Remember, I had said that in my first video. We don't want to overthink, and because it is a sketchbook, we're exploring, we're experimenting, we want to see what happens if we do a certain brush stroke or if we use a certain color in a certain way. We're really experimenting. So yeah, don't overthink, you know. Again, remember, you're that little kid who's just playing. So I'm using a flat brush, and the nice thing about this is not only can you do that wide flat stroke, but you can also use it on the edge and get lines. So whatever brush you're using, experiment with that. It's a tool. See what happens when you turn it in a different direction. Change up your strokes. Maybe you do short, maybe you're painting a square, maybe you're painting a circle. So this is a really fat, wide brush, which I originally laid down that color with, and also great for dabbing. And the less paint that you get on the tip of it, you get that nice textural dot quality, which is a fun thing to just experiment with. Right? So have fun with that. I'm just going to go back over some of these strokes over here and do that dabbing straight down. These are very hard bristles, so you can really do that kind of a dabbing because I just want to disrupt a little bit of those initial marks that I laid down. So that's also a part of what we do with abstract art, is we disrupt, and we can disrupt by scratching or by dabbing, or so I've taken this paint palette, right? And I'm using the edge, and I'm kind of drawing and scraping with the paint palette. So this is a part of mark making, is finding all these tools that may be part of your art toolbox or might not be, that might be things that you found lying around. Check your junk drawer. Everybody's got one. Check your junk drawer, and you might find, you know, like a screw or a nail, and just go in with whatever kinds of tools you might find in there and see what happens. Oh, that's very interesting. I get the crescent moon shape again. So I'm using the very tip of the screw, and just, I had scraped some of the paint off my brush, and I'm basically stamping with this screw, getting those really interesting little crescent shapes. So again, play, you know, look around your house, see what kinds of interesting things you have. Look in your junk drawers. Here's a nail. See what happens with different scratching tools. You could try the end of your paintbrush. You can try an old plastic comb if nobody's going to be using that, and do some really interesting kind of marks. See how we've now got some stripes happening with that. So play. Right? It just adds interest to whatever it is that you're working on. And I really do like, you know, trying different types of things I have lying around just to see what will happen. So this is, you know, just one of those little spiky, plasticky toy things. And so I'm using it like I would if I had a sponge as well. Oh, that is so cool, right? So, yeah, have fun with that. Absolutely love that, right? Another fun thing to do is, if you have a garage or a friend's garage, is to go hunting for implements that you can use. You know, just whatever you've got lying around. I would suggest you ask permission first. If it's, you know, stuff that belongs to a family member or someone you know, ask for their permission first, you know, before you're using a nail or a screw. Or here's this cute little screwdriver I found lying around that might make some really sharp marks. So, you know, if this belongs to somebody, just ask them first and make sure they understand you're using it with paint, so it might not be usable ever again. It's up to you. And oh, I wanted to add some white, so I'm taking my gesso again. And I just want to use that little toy again, but this time with the white paint on top. Let's see what we get with that. It's just adding more texture, more interest to the picture. Yeah, don't overthink, just play. And you know, I don't want to do too much because I don't want to cover up those really cool marks that have already been happening there, at least not at this point. They might get covered up in a few minutes with something else, but for this moment I think I'm liking how this is at the moment. So now I am thinking about either going in with acrylic paint or with the water-based oil paints. And I like the water-based oil paints because they mix and blend into each other really, really well. So I think I'm going to just reach for, let's see, we're doing cool colors. All right. So I've just grabbed a purple red and cobalt blue. So I'll squeeze some out. And I'm gonna pick a smaller brush this time. You know, with abstract paint, it's perfectly fine to work with cheaper brushes because you might be experimenting, you might be, you know, not so concerned about the condition of the brush, because sometimes when the brushes, when the bristles get splayed in different directions, you know, whether it's from dabbing or how you're using it, it creates such great texture, and it's really nice to have brushes that aren't perfect hanging around so that you can have that textural quality. So I'm just making kind of a purplish color from the red and the blue, and just going in, making that a little bit lighter, more of a gray, right? And so maybe try something that you haven't already put down on your background. So in this case, I'm doing thin stripes because that's different from what's already there. And I'm just, it's a flat brush, but I'm using it on the edge. So that's how I'm creating these lines. And changing up my stroke again, so now I'm doing short, dabbing a little bit again. I really like everything that's happening in this, so I don't want to do a whole lot more to this. I actually really like this. Yeah. So I am going to call that done for the moment. I am going to allow this paint to dry so that I can then go in with some of my tissue paper and do more collaging. So remember from my previous video that I had showed you some of this beautiful collage tissue paper that I just painted really quickly with some jelly gouache, and I have some metallic colors on this as well. So I do want to go back in with this And I'm hoping to achieve the same effect as I did with those smaller rectangles from my first video, where when I put down this beautiful tissue paper, applying it with the gel medium, it kind of, the tissue paper kind of melted essentially into the paper I'm working on in my sketchbook, and it just had this really beautiful textural quality to it, as well as some of this paint being picked up and moved out and into the background paper, because this was a gouache. So wetting it with the gel medium is loosening the paint and allowing it to be moved out again, a little bit like a watercolor effect. So that was really fun, and I want to do more of that again. So I need to wait for this to dry, and then I can go back in and do some more work on that. And I'm going to pull the tape up now. Look at that crisp, straight white edge. Isn't that nice? That's the fun thing. Whee! It's so great having that reveal at the end with those crisp white edges. Love it. So there you have it, and I'm going to stop this video for now because I need time for this to dry, and I'll come back in with video number 3 where I do some of the tissue paper collage on top of that. So thank you so much for joining me. Have fun sketchbooking.